Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be navigating the very complex world of hybrid threats in the Baltic Sea.
Okay.
We're going to be examining the legal complexities surrounding maritime navigation and then kind of exploring, is it even feasible to restrict non-EU ship access to the Baltic Sea?
Right.
You may be wondering, what exactly is a hybrid threat?
Yeah.
Unlike traditional warfare with clearly defined combatants and battlefields, hybrid threats, they really kind of blur the lines.
They do.
Think cyberattacks, crippling communication networks, or disinformation campaigns that are, sowing discord among the population.
Right.
In the context of the Baltic Sea, we're seeing increasing concern about the potential for sabotage of vital infrastructure,
Yes.
like undersea cables and pipelines, which are essential for the region's energy security and digital connectivity.
Absolutely. And to kind of put a finer point on that, let's look at some specific incidents that have happened recently that have really heightened these concerns. In November 2024, there were a couple separate incidents involving severed undersea internet cables that caused, pretty significant disruptions.
Wow.
One cable connecting Lithuania and Sweden was cut, and another linking Finland and Germany was also damaged.
Wow.
These incidents resulted in communication outages, really highlighting the vulnerability of this critical infrastructure in the region.
Yeah.
Then in December 2024, the S-Link 2 power cable, which is responsible for transmitting electricity between Estonia and Finland, was damaged. And while investigations are ongoing, the possibility of deliberate sabotage is a serious concern.
Yeah.
The incident really underscores the potential for these hybrid attacks to disrupt essential services and cause economic damage.
Right.
Adding to these concerns is what some are calling the emergence of a shadow fleet that's operating in the Baltic Sea.
A shadow fleet.
Yeah, these vessels often operate under ambiguous ownership and flag registration, which makes it very difficult to attribute their actions to any specific state. There's growing evidence that suggests that these shadow fleets may be involved in activities that kind of blur the lines between maritime espionage and potential acts of sabotage.
Like what?
Well, imagine a seemingly innocent fishing vessel
Okay.
dragging its anchor across a crucial undersea cable,
Oh, wow.
causing, significant damage.
Yeah.
Attributing that act and proving intent becomes incredibly difficult.
Yeah, that would be really hard.
It would.
So to understand the legal complexities surrounding, potential responses to these threats, I think we need to turn to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea,
Okay.
often referred to as UNCLOS.
Right.
This comprehensive treaty serves as the primary international legal framework governing maritime activities.
It does.
One of the key principles enshrined in UNCLOS is the right of innocent passage.
Right.
This right allows foreign vessels to navigate through a coastal state's territorial waters,
Okay.
which extend 12 nautical miles from the shore,
12 nautical miles.
as long as their passage is continuous and expeditious, and does not threaten the peace, good order, or security of the coastal state.
Right.
However, defining what constitutes a threat in the context of hybrid warfare, where actions can be ambiguous and intent difficult to prove, is a significant challenge.
It is.
Beyond territorial waters, UNCLOS defines another zone called the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ,
Okay.
which extends 200 nautical miles from the shore.
200 nautical miles.
In this zone, foreign vessels have more freedom of navigation,
Right.
while the coastal state retains control over the resources in its EEZ, including fishing rights, oil and gas exploration, and the laying of submarine cables and pipelines.
Okay.
This raises the question, can a coastal state restrict access to its EEZ if there's a perceived threat to this critical infrastructure, even if the threat falls short of a traditional act of war?
That's the real question here. And, the crux of the matter is that any restriction on access, whether in those territorial waters or the EEZ,
Right.
must be justified by concrete evidence of a very specific and immediate security threat.
Specific and immediate.
Yes, and any actions taken must be proportionate to that threat and comply with international law.
Right.
The challenge is in finding that balance between, national security interests and the principle of freedom of navigation, which is, a cornerstone of international maritime law.
Absolutely.
Adding another layer of complexity is the European Union's legal framework.
Okay.
The EU's Common Security and Defense Policy, or CSDP,
GSCP.
provides mechanisms for coordinated responses to security threats, including those in the maritime domain.
Right.
But EU member states must navigate the delicate balance between their own national security interests and their obligations under EU law.
Okay.
Any actions taken must align with the EU's broader commitment to freedom of navigation and international trade.
How?
And it's also crucial to consider whether UNCLOS offers any exceptions that might apply in cases of these hybrid threats.
Okay.
For instance, UNCLOS allows coastal states to take measures to protect their security during armed conflicts or in the face of imminent threats.
Right.
So, could these exceptions be invoked to justify restricting non-EU ships suspected of involvement in hybrid attacks on critical infrastructure in the Baltic Sea?
That's a great question.
It is. Answering this question requires a deeper exploration of the feasibility of actually implementing those restrictions and a careful consideration of the potential consequences.
Right.
So that's something we should probably talk about next.
Yeah, let's do that.
So let's talk about this idea of restricting access to the Baltic Sea for non-EU vessels.
Okay.
It presents some pretty formidable logistical and technological challenges.
Like what?
Well, for one thing, the Baltic Sea itself is a narrow and very heavily trafficked maritime corridor.
Right.
So that poses some inherent difficulties in effectively monitoring and enforcing any restrictions.
I see.
Imagine the complexity of trying to monitor every single vessel that's traversing this vital waterway.
Yeah.
To implement these types of restrictions, you'd need a sophisticated and very robust system encompassing advanced vessel tracking systems,
Okay.
underwater drones for surveillance, and coordinated patrols involving multiple countries.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It is. This endeavor would demand significant investment in naval assets equipped with cutting-edge technology just to ensure compliance and deter those potential threats.
It sounds really expensive.
It would be.
Yeah.
And furthermore, beyond those technical hurdles lies substantial economic and diplomatic ramifications that we have to consider carefully.
Right.
The Baltic Sea serves as a vital trade route. So restricting non-EU ships could disrupt the flow of goods and services,
Right.
potentially impacting economies in the region and beyond.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Right. And such actions could also escalate tensions with key non-EU nations like Russia and China, raising concerns about potential retaliation and further destabilizing the region.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Right.
So I think examining historical precedents can offer some valuable insights into the feasibility and the potential consequences of these types of maritime restrictions.
Absolutely.
Naval blockades, for example, have historically been employed during armed conflicts.
Right.
Really exemplify the need for that clear legal justification and underscore the inherent risk of escalation.
You do.
And then we can also look at the use of exclusion zones, which are temporary restrictions imposed around specific areas to safeguard critical infrastructure or operations.
Right.
Provide another historical example. Such zones have been implemented in the past, notably during the tanker wars in the Persian Gulf.
Interesting.
Now comparing the Baltic Sea to other contested maritime regions, like the South China Sea, for instance, reveals how regional cooperation and legal frameworks really play a crucial role in addressing these types of hybrid threats.
I see.
However, the Baltic Sea presents a very distinct geopolitical context with its own set of unique challenges.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Okay, the South China Sea is characterized by overlapping territorial claims involving multiple countries. And serves as a major artery for global trade. In contrast, the Baltic Sea primarily involves EU and NATO member states, with Russia as the main non-aligned actor.
I see.
This dynamic kind of simplifies coordination among EU and NATO allies, but simultaneously intensifies the potential for direct confrontation with Russia, particularly given its history of employing hybrid warfare tactics in the region. So addressing hybrid threats in the Baltic Sea requires tailored strategies that carefully consider this unique geopolitical landscape.
I agree. So given all of these complexities and challenges, what practical steps can actually be taken to mitigate these hybrid threats in the Baltic Sea?
Yeah, what can be done?
Well, one crucial area is safeguarding that critical infrastructure. So establishing exclusion zones around vulnerable undersea cables and pipelines, coupled with enhanced security measures, could serve as a deterrent against potential attacks.
So exclusion zones.
Yes, investing in a resilient infrastructure that's capable of withstanding or quickly recovering from attacks is equally essential.
So making it stronger
Exactly. Strengthening regional coordination and cooperation is another key area.
Okay.
Enhancing collaboration between the EU and NATO through joint patrols and intelligence sharing is vital.
Okay, so better cooperation.
Yes, developing a unified EU maritime security policy that's specifically tailored to counter hybrid threats would also be a significant step forward.
I see.
Furthermore, exploring legal and diplomatic strategies is crucial.
Like what?
Well, consider pursuing legal reforms under UNCLOS to explicitly address the ambiguous nature of hybrid warfare tactics.
Right.
Clarifying what constitutes a violation of peace, good order, or security in the context of hybrid warfare
Right.
would provide those coastal states with a stronger legal basis to restrict navigation in their waters.
Okay.
Promoting multilateral negotiations to define hybrid threats more explicitly within international law is essential.
So everybody's on the same page.
Right, and that would help ensure that ambiguous acts like sabotage or covert surveillance are adequately addressed.
I see. In addition to those legal reforms, we could also explore, introducing precedents from regional frameworks like the EU's maritime security strategy.
Okay,
Establish additional protocols for responding to hybrid threats,
I see.
agreements on shared intelligence, rapid response measures, and maybe designated maritime exclusion zones
Okay,
could really supplement those existing UNCLOS provisions.
right.
And then diplomatic engagement with those non-EU states to promote adherence to those maritime norms
Oh.
and build consensus on measures to combat hybrid threats, I think is equally important.
It is.
Platforms like the International Maritime Organization could really facilitate this type of dialogue.
They could.
The Baltic Sea really stands as the crucial maritime crossroads that's vulnerable to this new era of shadowy threats.
It does.
Effectively responding to these hybrid challenges requires a delicate balance.
It does.
We have to protect critical infrastructure,
Yes.
ensure regional security,
Uh-huh.
while upholding international law and navigating these very complex diplomatic relationships.
It's a tough challenge.
It is. The question remains, how will the international community adapt to this evolving threat landscape, and what precedents will be set in this strategically vital region?
Those are the key questions.
They are.
Yeah.
The answers to these questions are really going to shape the future of maritime security, not only in the Baltic Sea, but also in other regions that are grappling with similar challenges.
I agree. And another complicating factor that we have to think about is the difficulty in actually gathering definitive evidence in these cases of hybrid warfare.
Oh, right.
Unlike traditional acts of aggression where responsibility is often pretty clear,
Right.
hybrid attacks are designed to be ambiguous and difficult to attribute.
It's intentional.
Exactly. Proving intent and linking actions to specific state actors can be extremely challenging,
Yeah.
particularly when you're dealing with non-state actors or proxy forces.
Right.
This ambiguity makes it very difficult to invoke those traditional legal frameworks like UNCLOS,
Right.
which typically require clear evidence of a threat to justify actions such as restricting navigation. So the international community really needs to develop new mechanisms and strategies for gathering and sharing intelligence that's related to these hybrid threats. This includes investing in advanced surveillance technologies, improving information sharing between states and intelligence agencies, and developing new legal frameworks that actually account for the unique challenges of attribution in hybrid warfare.
So basically, new rules for a new type of warfare.
Exactly. A key consideration in addressing hybrid threats is the potential for unintended consequences.
Right.
Restricting access to the Baltic Sea, while seemingly a straightforward solution, could have far-reaching economic and diplomatic repercussions.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier.
Right. It could disrupt vital trade routes, impact those regional economies, and escalate tensions with key non-EU nations.
Right.
Any actions that we take must be very carefully calibrated to avoid exacerbating existing tensions or provoking unintended escalation.
Nobody wants to start a war.
Exactly. The focus should really be on building resilience and deterrence. Investing in robust infrastructure that can withstand or quickly recover from attacks is crucial.
Okay.
Enhancing cybersecurity measures to protect those critical systems from cyber attacks is equally important.
Right.
Strengthening that regional cooperation and coordination is also vital.
Uh-huh.
Joint patrols, intelligence sharing, and coordinated responses between the EU and NATO member states can really deter potential adversaries and demonstrate that unified front against these hybrid threats.
Strength in numbers.
Exactly.
So ultimately, addressing the challenge of hybrid threats in the Baltic Sea requires a multifaceted approach.
It does.
This includes strengthening legal frameworks, investing in new technologies, fostering regional cooperation, and engaging in diplomatic efforts to build consensus on those norms and rules of behavior in the maritime domain.
I agree.
The Baltic Sea really serves as a microcosm of the challenges posed by hybrid warfare in the 21st century.
I think so.
The lessons learned and the solutions that we develop in this region will have implications for maritime security globally as nations grapple with this evolving threat landscape.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.